Running a movie studio is exhausting.
A24 is an interesting movie studio. It began as a company putting out small budget, different art house type films, but it's begun to blossom into a successful studio, making not only well-regarded movies, but hits as well. Hell, in its 11-year history, A24 has produced 2 Academy Award-winning Best Pictures, Moonlight and Everything Everywhere All at Once. It has also won 18 Academy Awards out of 62 nominations. Sometimes, however, in its strive to be different, A24 has given us some, well, let's just say oddball movies. Check out Beau is Afraid and Midsummer. Those are pretty out there. Now, this past weekend gave us the release of the new A24 film, Heretic. It's a psychological thriller starring Hugh Grant. So, what do we have here? Is this a continuation of A24's recent success? Or is this one of their little bit too far out there oddball misses? Well, before we answer that, let's talk a little bit about the plot for the film Heretic.
You want to talk? Let's talk!
So here we find 2 young Mormon missionaries, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton. They are going about their missionary duties, talking to people on the street and going door to door to try to bring people into the church. One of these stops, however, is the house of Mr. Reed. Now, at first, Reed seems like a pretty laid-back guy. He's very interested in what they have to say. But as the conversation goes on, it begins to dawn on the girls that he is not what he's trying to portray himself to be. And as the tension rises, the girls become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Now trapped in his home, they must try to outwit Reed, using their knowledge and their faith if they want to get out of this situation alive. So what works in this film? Well, Hugh Grant, he's been around a long time, and he's mostly been known for his successful rom-coms of the late 90s and early 2000s. But recently, he's turned to more serious roles, and he is absolutely perfect here. He gives a stellar performance as Mr. Reed. His grandstanding and monologuing is a constant delight. It keeps even avid psychological horror and true crime fanatics guessing in that, unique A24 kind of way. When we first see him, he's a bit of an eccentric loner, but he slowly builds into an incredibly clever and diabolical villain. Kudos also to our 2 young actresses. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East play Sisters Barnes and Paxton. Now, Thatcher's Barnes character is a convert to Mormonism, and you can tell by the way she is betrayed that, while she has faith, she is a bit more skeptical and much more worldly than the significantly more naive and innocent Paxton. Now, neither one of these actresses have a lot of experience, but you would not know it from this. They both more than hold their own with the veteran Grant, and they really sell the growing fear and tension without overacting. Now let's also talk about the directing and the cinematography. Here we see Scott Barnes and Brian Woods. They directed, wrote, and produced this movie. Now, the last time they did this, all 3 of those, was a film called 65. Ever hear of it? It was a pretty crappy film from last year. But they more than make up for their mistakes in that one here. The pacing of this film is perfect. It runs about an hour and 45 minutes, and there's really no downtime. In the first 15 minutes of this movie, you immediately know the motivations of the 2 women, and the main story is already set up. The cinematography is absolutely fantastic. Most of the film takes place in Mr. Reed's home, and really it kind of just takes place in a few rooms. Beck and Woods get all they can out of the limited set and really give us a sense of the claustrophobic nature. You can really feel like the walls closing in on these 2 young women. It seems like everything you see in every shot has a meaning. The film is also very well written. There are no glaring plot holes or any big contrivances. What doesn't work here, and this is something I've seen a lot over the last 2 years. You might have seen the trailer for this movie. The trailer just gives up way too much information. I think a good trailer should intrigue you. It should make you think that, hey, I don't really know what this movie might be about, but it's very interesting. I want to see it. However, this trailer gives up a lot of the plot. And I just feel like it kind of steals away from some of the surprises in the film. Also, while the ending is really good, it's not perfect. It does leave us with a few too many questions. Now, obviously, I won't spoil it here. But that just goes to show you how absolutely fantastic this movie was. My biggest complaint was the trailer, and an ending that, well, it wasn't perfect, is still really good.
That was awesome.
So, compelled by terrifying performances by Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East, Heretic focuses more on the cerebral and the psychological horror rather than your typical jump scares. It's a signal flare to keep an eye on the futures of all three involved. And in a history of exceptional performances, Mr. Reed might be Hugh Grant's best character. The results of this movie are quite strong. It's a clever script, very well written, very well directed by Becken Woods. And what's most impressive about Heretic is how tidily and entertainingly it clips along, even though the vast majority of the film is just 3 people in a room talking. I think this is an absolute hit for A24. And I'm not saying Heretic is the best movie I've seen this year, but it's definitely near my top. I have a feeling word of mouth is really going to carry this film to great success, and I would absolutely not be surprised to see Grant get an Oscar nomination for his role. I'd actually be surprised if he didn't. I recommend this movie to everyone, especially if you like psychological thrillers. See this either in the theaters or on streaming. You will thank me later.
You have to see it.
Well, that's all I got for you today. Tune in next week when I give you my thoughts and feelings on whatever I've seen. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video with friends and enemies alike, and as always, thank you for giving me your valuable time, and I'll see you next week. Take care.